This is a Film Stories original podcast.
When it comes to weight loss, no two people are the same. That's why Noom builds personalized plans based on your unique psychology and biology. Take Brittany. After years of unsustainable diets, Noom helped her lose 20 pounds and keep it off.
I was definitely in a yo-yo cycle for years of just losing weight, gaining weight, and it was exhausting.
And Stephanie. She's a former D1 athlete who knew she couldn't out-train her diet, and she lost 38 pounds.
My relationship to food before Noom was never consistent.
And Evan, he can't stand salads, but he still lost 50 pounds with Noom.
I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. Even through the pickiness, Noom taught me that building better habits builds a healthier lifestyle. I'm not doing this to get to a number. I'm doing this to feel better.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom users compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
We made this. Hello everyone and welcome to the Xcast. The truth is in here. My name is Kurt North and thank you for joining us for the continuing coverage of I Want to Believe Minute, in which we are watching and discussing the X-Files second feature film, I Want to Believe. This time we're talking about minute 18, which is minute 17 to 17:59, and we are talking more about Father Joe. Joining me again for another episode is Mr. Luke Winch.
Greetings. Good to be back.
Great to have you back. We've got some minutes here, mate. We've got some minutes.
We have. We have got some minutes.
It's certainly been an interesting one, and I did let slip last episode my Billy Connolly impression. It wasn't great, as always, but these things are sent to try us. So just before we do that, there's a couple of things to talk about. If you do want to come and join us on our Patreon, you can do so. That's patreon.com/the Xcast. That's where you can get advert-free podcasts on any of the episodes that we get. You get them released early. There are special episodes that you can hear. There's interviews that haven't been released to the public, etc., etc. We've got plenty of things on there. And you can also come and join us on the X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it at the moment, at the X_cast. And also come and join us on Facebook on the X-Files Basement, the Xcast podcast fan group, which was plenty of discussion happening over there at the moment. There's Ronald Wilson is currently talking about the Erlenmeyer flask. And we recently, which was great, managed to speak to Chris Carter as well. And we did a commentary track with Mr. Carter on the Erlenmeyer flask. So seek out us talking with the man himself. Let's get back to business. Let's go back to where we need to be. We're talking about the next minute. And Father Joe is currently setting himself up to see what visions he can do. And Mulder asks if he sees the missing FBI agent alive. Joe feels that she is, but doesn't actually see her alive. So I think this minute is probably a good time to talk, Luke, about actually the idea of psychics, because people who claim to be psychics are often like try and demonstrate their abilities through various means, like, you know, tarot card readings or palmistry, you know, feeling people's auras like Melissa would do in One Breath, for example. It's certainly interesting when it comes to people who are skeptic, because within this episode should Scully really be here? And that, for me, it feels like it's an insight into that. I think Clive Buckman's probably the best example of it, where it's very much a tactic that people tend to use as a deflection technique, to maintain the credibility or manage the expectations of people within that room. It also, I think, adds a bit of cohesion or a kind of feeling about how authentic, sensitive people are to the energy and things, and how potentially a psychic could strategize that. Now, obviously, with Father Joe's case, that's not so much the case. It does actually have an earnestness about him, and he is actually more about his visions. But it has been, think about Harold in Closure, that, you know, he was looked at in that particular way. He had the seance that he would do things. So there's a lot to kind of delve into it in general with the way that like the psychics, the kind of practitioner and how they suggest things happen. And it's something the X-Files has done quite significantly over its time.
It's interesting because if you look at this particular minute primarily through Scully's eyes, and she believes that he's a fraud and he's not a psychic, and then you kind of think about the stuff that he says. So, like, you know, he says there's dogs barking. I feel that she is alive. It's all rather vague. And if you think back to Clive Bruckman's response and the stupendous Yappy, who would kind of go around the room and go, she was here, she was lying here. It's all very vague, generic stuff that could possibly, like, probably be 80% relatable to the scene of the crime, or 80% relatable to this particular person. It's a lot like when you get all these TV shows where they do hypnotists. You know, they usually do a lot of research with the people they bring on, and they're very susceptible and very suggestive. You know, because there are some people who won't be hypnotized because they're just of a different state of mind. From Scully's point of view, the vagaries that Father Joe is shouting out here, and I just kind of watched her through this whole minute, and just the look of contempt and disgust on her face is fantastic. And that's proper Scully there, because I know Gillian Anderson has said famously that she found it really difficult to get back into Scully's head, but she's brilliantly Scully in this scene. So yeah, it's really interesting, and it's really interesting how the X-Files has approached psychics. And the different kind of psychics, and you know, they have approached it from the authentic point of view, like Clive Bruckman, like Father Joe, but they've also approached it from the kind of fraudulent side as well. So I like the way that all that plays into this particular minute.
Yeah, and it's kind of like an interesting one to fathom out, because if you think about the case, actually, because Mulder gets brought into this because they think that he can help, and the premise of this movie is effectively he is willing to listen to Father Joe, and that's about it. That's his expertise is obviously to, like, sort of contemplate what things are, but his whole reason for being there is because Father Joe claims to be psychic, and Mulder might be able to tell if he's not. And I do find that a really, really weak way of bringing Mulder back, but at the same time, all right, you go with the flow, don't you? But it's fascinating to see using these psychic practitioners and you know, just some of the trademark hallmark things that, like, as I say, was maybe better off Scully not being there, because she's the illusion obviously is like in Clive Bruckman, where it's like you're giving bad energy, but Father Joe doesn't do that. He's not saying you're giving off bad energy. It's like he's literally just going, I think it's maybe better if you leave the room, because you're messing with me more than anything else. And as you say, with the way Gillian Anderson plays it is really good. But yeah, and I do like as well how at this point we're not even really necessarily considering that he's a fraud as such. It's more about the subject matter more than the actual, like, theme of, like, the psychic itself. So it doesn't really delve too much into that. But I do find it interesting that it's kind of like just the way that, you know, the prayer beads have been brought in, that he's praying, that he's saying his visions are from God and stuff. I do find that really, really interesting.
Yeah, and the fact that when Father Joe says, you know, it would be better if she leaves, and then she kind of says, well, I think that you're using these visions to make people forget who you really are. He's basically she thinks he's trying to use the fact that he has got these visions of this crime that he can help the FBI will somehow paint over the horrific acts that he's done in the past. And in Father Joe's eyes, it's his way of arriving to redemption, of getting redemption, finding forgiveness with God again. So I love those two opposing views between Scully and Father Joe here in this bit.
Yeah, it's just drilling down. It's really getting to the forefront of the discussion that they're going to have together with the don't give up stuff. In that, you know, it's that Father Joe isn't giving up. You know, it's like, you know, why am I getting these visions? He's haunted by them. He's not, you know, he didn't want this in the first place, and he's just is he kind of like making use for it? which is what Scully's saying, but really he isn't. He's kind of like just saying, I don't understand why I'm doing that. My faith is being tested. And the kind of the Catholic element of it, I'm not one myself, so I can't really speak for them too much. But obviously, the idea behind this is kind of like, the fact that they're both coming from the same ground. That he's wanting to use the term you did the other episode, step up. He's wanting that step up. He's feeling like this is the way to redemption. This is reconciliation for him. This is, something he can do to help somebody. He doesn't know it's for somebody he's actually already did wrong to yet. Absolutely nowhere near that yet. But the fact that he's having that redemption stuff and this is the beginning of that, then having the other side of Scully going, you're just trying to hide exactly who you are, is just, it's fascinating just that they can be on the same page but actually be on completely separate journeys. I do think this element is really good writing. Yeah,
really good writing. This whole scene is, and the underlying theme running through it, I think, they are core X-Files themes anyway. There's, we've had so many episodes in the past that deal with this kind of situation. So it's great that Carter was kind of going back to that in this movie. In the next couple of minutes, we're going to really get back to classic Mulder and Scully time, like conversation, and also a kind of reflection of who they are and who they were as well. So it's I really like that Carter's digging down into these kind of things in this film, and particularly in over this 5 minutes that we're discussing.
Yeah, and I think the next minute that we're going to talk about is effectively Scully leaves, and she's on the balcony, which is what we're going to talk about next episode. Because we don't see it, and let's talk about it now. The fact that we actually don't see Father Joe deal with these visions at this moment. We obviously see it later on with the eyes and things, but we actually don't see it here. And I find that totally, as we have been for many a time in Scully's point of view, we follow Scully outside that room. We follow Scully to the balcony. We don't see the main crux of this film. We don't see the fact of the X-File as such. We're looking at it through Scully's eyes, and Scully walks away. We will see the X-File. We'll see it in about 15, 20 minutes' time. But it's interesting that we don't really need to delve into that right now, because we're just dealing with the actual theme and the discussion points and the conflict of interest between the two of them. And I do think that's expertly handled.
Definitely.
Right. Well, that's this minute. This minute was going to be quite a difficult one, because there wasn't much to go on, really. Apart from obviously those two things, it's very much like kind of reiterating what we said before. But it certainly is a powerful moment, and not as good as the previous minute. Obviously, the previous minute we had some of the memorable phrases and stuff like that, but still at the same time, we are kind of getting an idea of exactly what's going on here. So, without further ado, let's head into the following minute. Thank you, Luke, for joining me again for this episode. It's been much appreciated. It's been great going through these minutes with you. We're going to have some creepiness going on next episode. We're going to have some really... Let's just sniff my nose as a kind of allusion to something that we might talk about next episode. Yeah, shall we dive into the minute next?
Yeah.
Let's do that. We'll see you next episode. Until next time. No one.